So today we are reviewing Elemental, Pixar's latest release. Now this movie actually came out a few weeks later in the UK than it did in the US, so I've been seeing this movie get a lot of slack. One, because it's one of Pixar's biggest failures in terms of box office returns, or at least it was when I saw it last. And two, there's also a lot of people saying they don't like the movie, they don't like the concept. Pixar have kind of fallen off from what they used to do. But in my opinion, I actually think this is a good movie. I actually think this is one of Pixar's best releases for a while. I don't know if it cracks my top 10 Pixar movies. When I make the ranking video for that, we'll see where it ranks. I think this is kind of on par with movies like Soul or Inside Out. It's kind of in the same vein as that. I feel like a lot of the complaints always center around, oh, they don't have a villain, or it's not how it used to be. And I feel like a lot of people just want the same cookie cutter movies over and over again. And we hear all the time people complaining, oh, there's no original stuff. There's no original games or movies or TV shows. It's all remakes. And I think the reason for that is one, yes, it's guaranteed success to remake stuff. But two, people don't want to see new stuff for the most part. You know what I mean? People don't want to give a chance to the new kind of stuff. And I actually think this movie's a lot better than people give it credit for. I bet a lot of people criticizing it didn't even watch it. They only saw trailers. I don't want this to come across as like my elemental defense piece. You know what I mean? And we'll get into the good stuff, right? I feel like one thing I should address about people not liking it is some people said they don't like the element thing, right? They said, why not use actual people? Because it tries to tell this really deep kind of race/immigrant story of people moving to a new country and not getting accepted and the challenges of being an immigrant. And they kind of use it using fire people, and people are saying, well, why not use real people? And I think there's two reasons for that. One, you have to remember it's a kids' movie, and a bunch of people who are in their 20s, 30s, and above criticizing a kids' movie for not being a bit more deep is a bit of a sticky one, considering yeah, it's a kids movie, and two, it's Pixar, and Pixar is still Disney, and Disney aren't gonna push the boat out too far. You know what I mean? All these companies, they're gonna promote wokeness in some fashion, but they're not gonna push it out and be controversial. They don't want to push the line too much, right? They never will actually create something like that. They'll only give you little undertones. They're not gonna allow something crazy to come out of their studio. And like I said, this in recent memory is one of the better Pixar movies. Like I haven't seen the last two releases, Lightyear and Turning Red. I didn't bother watching those. But prior to that, I've seen every other movie. And when you think of some of the ones who released before that, Luca, the one with Tom Holland, Onward or whatever, even Soul, I think this is better than all of those. I think this is the best movie since. This is one of the best movies since maybe Coco. Like, I think Coco is still slightly better than it, but everything after that is definitely better than, in my opinion. Let's talk about the specific things I really like about this movie. I like the two main characters. I think they actually have good chemistry. I've seen some people say that they don't believe that, it could be a relationship or the chemistry isn't there. They don't see it. I think the chemistry and the interactions between both characters are actually really, really good. I think they mesh well. I think it was wrote very well. I think you see the progression of the relationship move on and on. And yeah, you kind of understand the challenges and stuff like that. I think it was very well done in terms of that. I also like the underlying messages. I've talked about things trying to go deep before. I remember mainly in like Parasite. Attack on Titan is the perfect example of trying to tell an underlying story. Like the political stuff in Attack on Titan is great, but it's not the main thing. I think this, obviously, one of the main drawing points and main story is the struggles of being like an immigrant and making a new life in a different country that may not be built for you or stuff like that. And it tells a pretty nice immigration story about like the fire family that move on to have a better life and how hard it can be, when you don't speak the language or you don't know the city and things aren't built for you in mind and stuff like that. I think it tells a pretty great story. And since both sides of my family immigrated, my granddad literally came to this country, didn't speak English, and he opened a restaurant, and that's how he made his living. Kind of relatable to me in that respect. Obviously, I'm not a first, I didn't immigrate to this country. I speak English. I didn't go through those struggles. It's kind of relatable in that aspect. And I think most people can understand that kind of struggle. And I think it tells a great story using that. I also like kind of how they show the difference between different classes. Like you have the water guy and his family's quite like well off. They obviously are quite privileged. One's an artist. They live in a very nice penthouse suite and, they have a lot of privilege. They all have good jobs, blah, blah, blah. And then you show the immigrant family with the fire people. And I really like the scene where the water guy's mum offers her a job because she's like, oh, you're so talented at making glass, right? Or whatever. She was great at making like glass shit. And he's like, oh, I can offer you a job. We should get you a job with this person. I know the best glass manufacturer in Element City or whatever. And then just seeing like, for some people that would be a no-brainer, but because she has that responsibility of maybe taking over the shop and she's conflicted with that, I really like that stuff. And it kind of shows the different mindsets and stuff between like almost, I like to say homegrown, but that's like a football term. Like people from the country and maybe immigrants, it shows the difference in culture and difference in mindset. I like that. I also think the emotional moments are actually pretty good. I know a lot of people say like when he died, it was very obvious he wouldn't die because it is a Pixar movie, bro. How many deaths are there actually in Pixar movies? I feel like there's not many, but they are kids' films. But I think it was a pretty emotional moment. I think some of them were a bit forced, like some of them are a bit tropey as well, but for the most part, the emotional moments are good. I like how they show like some of the characters in different stages of life. You see like the dad's and mum's journey from like Fire City to Element City, which was pretty cool. And of course, the last thing I'll say about the good stuff is the animation is top tier, but that's Pixar for you, bro. I really like to see it. I think it was really nicely done. Everything looked really nice. All the people are pretty coolly animated, and yeah, I really like most things about this movie. Now let's talk about some of the bad things. Of course, it's not a perfect movie. There are some bad things that hold it back. There are some bad things that hold it back. Of course, I did slightly mention there is some tropey things with this story where it's kind of like, okay, we knew this was gonna happen. It's kind of like she kind of does this whole fake thing where she kind of breaks up with the guy and screams at him in front of everybody, and then she didn't mean it, and then she has to apologize, and then there's a lot of tropey shit in here, which is kind of weird and typical. It doesn't bother me too much, but I guess it would bother some people. The next thing is there are some weird like racial slurs in here, like towards each other, and maybe that's why they didn't use real races because it would be a bit crazy to do that. But like they call each other like airhead, like this air woman gets called that, and then she calls the fire lady like firecracker or some shit. Like I don't know if those are meant to be racial slurs. I don't know. It's kind of funny and kind of weird. There's also that weird pruning scene where like the two trees are like pulling off the berries. I don't know what that's meant to symbolize. That was weird. I will say there is a weird. I also say it's very weird how like her temper metaphor is used. Like, why did they need that in there? Like, she's angry because she doesn't want to do something, but she doesn't know she's angry at that. Like, come on, bro, that's a bit of a weird thing. It's very obvious, and it doesn't really factor in to the movie at all. Okay, you could have made her insecure about about many things, but she only gets angry because she can't deal with customers, and that means she doesn't want to run her dad's shop. That makes absolutely no sense. I'm sorry. That plot line there is very weird. I also think it would have been nice to see more of the backstory, like what is Fire City like and stuff like that. Like where do all the elements come from and where did they originally come from would be cool. Also, the tree guys and the air guys or the earth or whatever they're meant to be, they have no relevance to the story. These people are just absolutely not involved in any means except for like some weird comic relief. They are not involved at all. It is also kind of hard. It is also kind of hard to believe that this is the first fire and water relationship ever. Like, this is the first, I guess, interracial relationship in the element world. They've never touched before, not even by accident. Like, one didn't even trip on the train and hit each other. But it does seem like in the movie, the fire people do not go into the city and they live in their little borough and they don't even venture to the city. Yeah, that is kind of weird. I feel like that would be something that would have happened many times before. And how does that work for fire and earth peoples, considering fire people just set them on fire? And it seems like water people make earth people go. It's weird. Like the law seems very strange. Also, one thing on the racism thing, the dad is very racist. Like the fire dad is extremely racist. I don't know why they did this to him. I mean, I can attest that yes, some immigrants can be racist. You know what I mean? I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it with my friends and stuff like that. It's just like where they come from. Certain people have certain afflictions, but yeah, but for some reason the father is incredibly racist to the water guy, and then in the end of the movie he doesn't give a fuck anymore. He's just like, yeah, you know what? I like this guy now, or at least they don't bring it up. They just kind of totally forget because now he's suddenly alive again, and that's like the father forgot he was racist 10 minutes ago. I don't know. That was weird. But overall, what would I rate this movie out of 10? On Letterboxd, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I would give it like a 7.8 out of 10. I think it's very good. When I do my Pixar ranking, I'm sure it will come very close to top 10. So I think it's worth watching overall. For me, currently, it's probably in my top 10 movies of the year too. So yeah, I would say you should watch this. I enjoyed it. I know not everyone will enjoy it, but personally, I really liked it. And yeah, that's all I got for you today. I'll see you all in the next one.